Hello everyone and welcome to this free RAMS Rail course on the EU Regulation 40222013, also known as CSM, Common Safety Method for Risk Evaluation and Assessment. This course is part of a series of courses explaining how to manage RAMS in the railway sector. The common safety methods are established in accordance with Article 6 of Directive 2016/798, also known as the Safety Directive. It is important to highlight here that there are up to 7 common safety methods, each of them having different purpose. The most famous one at the railway industry level is the Common Safety Method for Risk Evaluation and Assessment, which is the main subject of this course. Whenever we refer to CSM in the following slides, we will refer only to this CSM. CSM is a regulation that sets out the risk assessment process to be applied in case of technical, operational or organizational changes. The criteria to be fulfilled by the assessment body responsible for checking the correct application of the risk assessment. And the harmonized design targets for technical systems which should help with mutual recognition of those systems across the European Union. Is CSM mandatory? Depends on your country. In the European Union, all EU regulations are mandatory. The CSMs are directly applicable and enforceable in the member states. Depending on the scope of the change, they are applied either by authorities or bodies, or by specific actors of the railway system. For example, railway undertakings, infrastructure managers, entities in charge of maintenance, etc. Who has to apply CSM? CSM shall be applied by the proposer. The proposer is a role that can be allocated to one of the following entities depending on the situation. A railway undertaking or an infrastructure manager which implements risk control measures. B. An entity in charge of maintenance. C. A contracting entity or a manufacturer. D. An applicant for an authorization for the placing in service of structural subsystems. What type of changes are subject to CSM? The changes of a technical, operational or organizational nature. Regarding organizational changes, only those changes which could impact the operational or maintenance processes shall be subjected to consideration. This means if we restructure the marketing department in an infrastructure manager, CSM does not need to be applied, but if we do the same with the rail maintenance department, the CSM shall be applied. CSM exceptions. There are some exceptions where CSM is not mandatory. These are basically the same as the ones defined in the Safety Directive 2016/798. Metros. Networks that are separate from the rest of the railway system, for example mountain railways. Privately owned infrastructure for rail freight operators. Heritage vehicles. And also, touristic railways operating their own network. Similarities with EN 50126. Both documents aim to improve the safety of railway systems through a very similar systematic process. Both deal with safety across the life cycle of the railway system, from design, through operation, to decommissioning. They both emphasize identifying, assessing, and managing risks and hazards in railway systems to prevent accidents. The risk acceptance principles are the same: codes of practice, reference system, and explicit risk estimation. CSM is a regulation while 5126 is a standard. EU regulations are mandatory in the EU while standards are in general voluntary, unless enforced by a national/EU law or by the project contract. CSM has broader scope. It applies each time a change is introduced into the overall railway system. It can also cover non-technical systems, for example, operational procedures, organizational changes, etc. In 5126 the demonstration of the safety requirements shall be structured in a safety case with a defined structure, while in CSM this is not regulated. Both documents require the independent assessment of an external body. In 5126 the term for this body is ISA, Independent Safety Assessor, while as CSM the term is ASBO, also known as Assessment Body. The requisites to act as an ASBO are strictly regulated. CSM defines safety targets, 1 10 times to the power of -9 for failures directly leading to catastrophic consequences and 1 10 times to the power of -7 for failures leading to critical consequences. This slide provides a simplified overview of the whole CSM process. The initial step is to define the new system or change under consideration. This means describing the purpose of the system or change, its boundaries and affected functions. The second main step is to identify any hazards related to change introduced. For this step a combination of methods are recommended: FMEA techniques, hazard lists, hazard identification workshops with the affected parties, etc. The third step is to assess the risk of each of the identified hazards. For those whose risk is not tolerable, a set of mitigations shall be defined. The definition of mitigations are guided by 3 risk acceptance principles defined in the regulation. These are codes of practice, similar reference system, or explicit risk estimation. Further information on these risk acceptance principles can be found at the full course at www.ramsrail.com. Finally, once the mitigations have been defined, the last step of the process will consist of demonstrating that the mitigations defined have been finally implemented. Independent assessment. CSM requires an independent assessment to control the process and the results. The ASBO shall be independent from the entity implementing the CSM process. The ASBO can also be the independent safety assessor, as defined in the CENELEC standards. However, remember that the ASBO needs to be accredited by the National Accreditation Entity or recognized by the National Safety Agency. It is time to say bye for now. Remember to access www.ramsrail.com if you would like to provide any feedback on this course and also to check other available RAMS courses. We hope to see you soon.